You're watching Bread and Roses, a weekly political social magazine that's broadcast in English and Persian via New Channel TV. Hi, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya. In this week's program, we'll be looking at Pro-Islamist Left and its role in expansion and growth of Islamist movement. We'll be interviewing Reza Moradi, our very own director, who recently blasted at the Islamist meeting in his own university.
In the shocking news of the week, we'll be talking about the horrendous attack on a young woman who had burnt the Koran. She had been beaten, lynched and burnt. We'll also have an insane fatwa from Khamenei, who wants to ban Chaharshanbeh suris because he thinks it's harmful to people's health.
And in good news of the week, we'll remind everybody that the world did not come to an end despite Pastor Mark Blitz's predictions that because of the eclipse, this is end of the world.
Well, we're still here, aren't we? Before we go into our program, though, we do want to wish everyone again a happy Nowruz and to just salute the mothers and families of Khawaran and political prisoners in Iran who came out to celebrate despite all the problems that they face.
I think, and also people of Kobani actually celebrated Nowruz, and we should send congratulations to people of Kobani who they're not living under Islamist Daesh anymore.
Stay with us. The anti-imperialist and pro-Islamist left uses multiculturalism, charges of racism and Islamophobia, amongst others, to defend the far-right Islamist movement. This politics betrays the dissenters and victims of Islamism, and also the very principles that the left has historically defended, from social justice, egalitarianism, secularism, universalism, and human liberation, including from religion. Now, I have a special dislike, to put it lightly, for this pro-Islamist left, because I myself am on the left, and I do feel such a betrayal. I don't expect anything better from the far right, from the right, from governments and so on and so forth, but I do expect a lot more, and therefore it just feels really upsetting to see a left that sides with my oppressor, with my so-called fascist against their own.
And I think these groups are really part and parcel of broadly nationalist movement, anti-colonial movement, and they are always, you see them standing next to the Islamists, because my experience, and I'm sure yours as well, is when we've actually developed a radicalism and sort of left approach and socialist approach to liberation from fighting with these guys. Because in Iran we've had experience of the pro-Islamist left who've supported Khamenei and the rise of the political Islam in Iran. And we've seen that in different countries as well. We've seen that actually they stand next to Ahmadinejad. These are regional states from Venezuelan sort of lefty sort of government to all the anti-colonial and nationalist left.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. This is not just a European phenomenon. Sure. It is something that we see in countries, including those that are facing, U.S. militarism and imperialism in a place like Iran. But what is clear is that this is a sort of anti-colonial movement that seems to only side with the ruling class in those colonies, and doesn't see a distinction between people versus the the people who are running things.
Always stands by the Islamist and the Islamist movement, always. I mean, that's when there's, and also when you question them, they start criticizing the people who are fighting the Islamists. That's always, they're very clear in that regard, and you'll see, you go and start discussion with anybody from that left, they start actually criticizing people because they haven't done it right.
Well, in a sense, you see that what this sort of left has done is to prevent real solidarity from taking place, because they are aligning with the ruling elites in those societies, and therefore social movements, class politics is completely absent from their analysis. And what they don't see is that Islamism is actually a force for imperialism as well. It is also a type of colonizer as well.
And absolutely, they always justify the politics because they think these groups have mass support. Actually, they don't. The issue of mass support and this movement is exactly the same relationship that the fascist movement has always had, claiming and pretending that they come from the working class. Actually, they don't. They have no relation with the needs of the masses in those countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at this phenomenon, it's very important to challenge it. As Fariborz said, our radical left perspective came out of a challenge with this pro-Islamist left. And I think we need to reoccupy the space of the left, the real left, because we do need a left analysis against the Islamists, in the sense that we can't allow the far right, racist right, the xenophobic right to take over this space and be seen as the only criticism of Islamism, because fundamentally they're very much the same.
Recently we saw a video clip of you blasting Islamists in your university. Tell us a bit more about this and the background.
That day I had just finished work on my way home, and somebody from the union invited me to this meeting on immigration. And when I asked who's in it, and she listed basically the speakers, also spokespersons of Muslim Association of Britain. When I asked her, what is this person doing here? And she went on, and somebody else went on and on about Islamophobia and all the mosques that have been burned in the UK, and on and on. And it is so important to have Muslim representation there. So, you know, I argued with them that this is on immigration, and this person has nothing to do with immigration. He represents political Islamic movement, and he shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be there, and he's not representing anybody, basically. So, except political Islamic movement. And I went to the meeting. I hadn't gone to the meeting to protest, but when I saw the meeting, which was more a very highly political meeting organized by my union, and of course very wrong politics, defending Islamists and going on and on about Islamophobia. So there I had to protest, and I did.
And this took place in your university. What's the significance of this protest at universities?
Well, the universities have become a very safe ground for Islamists to come and act and recruit, basically. That's what they are doing. And they have not faced any kind of proper challenge so far. And I think it is very important that we disgrace these political Islamists in universities and put them under pressure. This recruitment of students must end. This is why I think it is so important to fight Islamists in universities and cut hands of political Islamists from students and universities.
And what role do you think the pro-Islamist left plays in universities?
Well, again, legitimizing political Islamic movements. That's exactly what they are doing. Legitimizing supporters of Sharia, like this Muslim Association of Britain, a branch of Muslim Brotherhood, or other type of Islamists. Basically, what they are suggesting is that these organizations, this Islamic organization, represent Muslims. And I'm like, no, I represent Muslims a lot better than any of those Islamic associations and organizations. They represent Islamic political Islam. They represent Sharia in power. And we've seen what Sharia in power is. We've seen ISIS, we've seen Islamic regime of Iran, we've seen Saudi Arabia. I represent Muslim students, I represent those innocent kids much more and better than any of those Islamists. They represent disgusting political Islamic movement that is responsible for crimes against humanity. That's what they represent. They do not represent Muslims in this country.
Yeah, you mentioned funding and the source of funding for these organizations. What do you mean by that?
Well, their leaflets, you see, I mean, not all, I'm talking about certain type of Islamic organization that act in universities. The type that, well, they have usually like 3-4 girls in burqa in one side, a few guys there, quite aggressive, and they all have in different universities exact same type of leaflets. Outside sources pay for their leaflets. This is enough. For me, I mean, if students want to get together, have a society, promote whatever kind of idea they like, it doesn't matter how outrageous, it does not matter whatsoever. They should be able to do it. They must have the right to do it. They should print out their own leaflets, you know. So for me, it's like, why is that outside sources actually, basically, this is what it is. Outside sources organize Islamists in universities, and this is the problem, and this must end.
You've received a lot of support in social media and from the action you've undertaken. Why do you think this is?
First of all, thanks to all the lovely people who supported me in this. The reason is that I spoke for them. The reason is that, you know, everybody knows how disgraceful, how outrageous these Islamists are. Everybody kind of knows what they are up to. We've seen the result of their works, you know. We've seen victims of their recruitments like Jihadi John. And, you know, we all want to speak up. We all want to speak out against these Islamists. But we are under lots of different kinds of pressure. Being labeled Islamophobia, being labeled racists, and on and on. So, I mean, I know Islamists, I know their tactics, I know their ways of putting pressure and silencing people, and I don't care. I speak for the ones who supported me, and I would do it again and again.
Reza Moradi, thank you very much. You're brilliant behind and in front of the camera.
Thank you very much.
To come to see supporter of a political system that is kind of the fascism of our time being represented in this panel from an organization that says stoning in Khalifa is permissible. So stoning women to death, stoning people to death in Iraq and Syria is okay for one of the panelists here. The man who represents and supports the political system, the Islamic fascism that I escaped from, and thousands and thousands escaped from. Excuse me, Sally, you represent my union, right? I'm sorry. Shame on you. I'm sorry to have to say that for having this man here. Look,
Reza, that is not appropriate.
Sitting next to a fascist representative, taking a picture with him. Excuse me. I am a member of a staff here. I don't want this in my workplace. You are not doing asylum seekers and refugees any favor by keeping silent about all the crimes of political Islam in this country. You are not doing us a favor.
Reza, thank you very much. You've given your opinion now. We're going to let... yes, you can come back later, Reza, but we need to let Sally know we're having our...
I am not going to listen to your comments. Yes. I'm not going to sit here. I don't want to listen to another fascist representative in my workplace.
Reza, we are here to listen to everybody.
Unbelievable.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as well as the clip. I mean, it's astounding how many people have written in to say how they felt such a sigh of relief to see the Islamists, the fascists being challenged in this way because they don't see it enough. And in a sense, it's surprising because this is exactly the sort of response they should be getting every day, day in and day out.
And I think this challenge is doubly important in universities, because that's where sort of Islamists have historically targeted and groups of young people and questioning, and that's been a sort of the point and the center that have actually organized themselves. So that's the key point. The other aspect is you always see the pro-Islamist left siding with these people and justifying, and I think one criticism that I have, they weaken the anti-racist movement, there's a movement of anti-fascism, for example, in Britain and many countries in Europe, by including these fascists from Middle East and North Africa and from Britain, because the Islamist movement is a fascist movement, but including them in the anti-fascist movement and justifying their presence, they weaken the cause of, and this allows the right wing to attack anti-fascist movement, and I think that they are betraying the cause of
in a sense,
anti-fascism.
you know, this is what I always say, unite against fascism should actually be called unite against some forms of fascism, because you can't side with one, you know, the other's fascists against your own and think that you're going to make any progress in actually pushing back fascism. You're not. And in a sense, that's why it's, you know, it's perfectly explains this movement as a politics of betrayal, because you're betraying, you know, your principles, you're betraying the many people who are fighting against the Islamist fascists, but without your support and solidarity, which they deserve.
And also, we need to recognize that the pro-Islamist left, they do not support universalism, they don't support secularism, they don't support equality, because now they're supporting the Islamists who negate all of these, and they've actually sold out. You know, there's no more pretense anymore, and that's our responsibility to make sure we occupy, as you say, that space and show the world that the proper radical criticism of Islamism and fascism, they have to go hand in hand.
I mean, the reality is that we've got to push this sort of trend back. You know, we have to say uncompromisingly that there can be no collusion, appeasement, justification of the Islamist fascists, and that it is a human, a secular, a universal approach that, you know, sees everyone as equal, doesn't make excuses for cultures and religions, and that defends, you know, humanity and citizenship's right is the way to go. You know, and part of that fight for a decent 21st century is fighting against this trend that is siding with the fascism of our era. In shocking news of the week, we are bringing you the horrendous news of a young woman, Farkhondeh, who was beaten, lynched, burnt to death for burning a Quran. And you know, if you actually see the video of this attack, it is something that will haunt you forever. It is the most heinous crime possible, and all because of a book, the Quran. You know, I'm not for burning books and tearing them, but really, you know, when I see things like this, I don't know what to do with this book, you know.
I think you need to recognize that what's happened in Afghanistan, it's happening every day in many countries where the Islamists have power, in Iran, and now there is a huge movement that started from Afghanistan, brilliantly. People are asking for justice for Farkhondeh, the girl who actually was lynched and burned to death. And that's important to recognize. Despite what we think of Quran, which is a rubbish piece of literature as far as I'm concerned, it's full of misogyny, hatred, division, racism, you name it, which is a worthless, literally, it's a worthless piece of, you know, a book. But despite that, nobody should be burned to death. You know, a moment of her life is worth more than thousands of books
all
like
the Qur'ans in the world.
And I think that's to recognize. You know, we need to join that movement for justice for Farkhondeh, and people who've done that. The mullah in Kabul has actually gone and said that she deserved what she got.
I mean, you've got clerics, you've got police who stood by while she was being beaten in this way. You've got clerics now defending the action and saying that no one has a right to tear or burn this Quran.
You should throw it on the floor now.
And, you know, you've got people who are progressives in the West you know, tweeting me and saying, well, what does she expect if she tears the Quran? And the point is that stop with this offense industry and start seeing human beings. No book is worth the life of a human being. Full stop. I don't care what she's done with it, whether she has mental health problems, whether she doesn't, whether she did it as a sign of protest against this Islamic misogyny. She has a right to do it, and even if you don't like it, look away, go somewhere else, go and hold your holy book holy. It is not holy to many of us.
And also, most of the governments who have diplomatic missions in Kabul, they've actually kept quiet. They haven't said a word. You know, they're pouring millions of pounds, for example, for the rule of law in that country.
Sharia law as well, in Britain and everywhere.
And you know, they've kept quiet, and that's shameful. And it's important there must be mass protests, pressure for justice for Farkhondeh, and we must join this campaign. And everybody needs to, you know, support her and condemn this barbaric action by the Islamists in Afghanistan.
in Insane Fatwa of the Week, it's from Khamenei again, and he has issued a fatwa against Chaharshanbeh suri, which is the last Wednesday of the year before the Nowruz, where people jump on fires. It's an old, very, very old tradition, and they take all the sickness from their body and take the warmth and redness from the fire. Anyway, he said that it should be banned because it is not desirable that people get hurt and harmed, and causes a lot of losses and harm which are desirable to be avoided. Well, do you mind not executing and killing all these people, and then you're worried about a little, people having fun?
I think we should ask John Rees to come and explain how lovely and soft Khamenei is. I think that's important. That's the type of thing they do. But I think, in reality, this shows, a regime who is one of the most barbaric regimes in Middle East and the history of Iran. Now suddenly they're worried about, jumping in a tradition because they're against this, because people
it's
get
fun,
together.
people like it, people
and
enjoy
people
it.
get together, and irrespective of where they are, they actually have a brilliant moment. And I mean, it's interesting. Earlier we were discussing the case of a young man who. You mentioned that
Mohsen Maliki.
Yeah, who's been taken in for in the last several months. He was arrested once.
Well,
and
what happens is that
he's been taken in by the police.
Every Chaharshanbeh suri, they arrest people, harass them to stop people from celebrating. And he's been arrested a few Chaharshanbeh suris before, and every year he was asked to come and register, and he was taken to a camp to keep him from joining the celebrations. This year he didn't go and sign himself in, and they arrested him and they killed him under torture that same day, according to his mother. And she was talking about how they've handed over his body without any clothes on, stark naked, and haven't even handed his clothes back.
I think that this is a really horrible news, and despite the fact that we laugh at these insane fatwas, these fatwas are miserable piece of edicts that destroys people's life, and I think that's quite a horrible thing to actually see that on daily basis. It destroys people's lives.
I mean, I think that's the point, is that all of these fatwas are really against people celebrating, people living, people laughing, and enjoying their lives. It's all about restriction and control, and it leads to, really heinous rights violations for many people across the globe.
Now, the good news is that the world did not come to end, and is not about to come to end. Pastor Mark Blitz has predicted, because of the lunar eclipse, which is a sign of end of the world and possible judgment, the world may be coming to end.
Well, it hasn't. I'm not sure how he's going to...
We've got to wait. You don't know. It could be some more. I think the interesting thing is that why does this becomes news in a way?
Exactly, honestly.
Why are we discussing this?
Because it's funny.
I mean, this is a sign. First of all, always with these incidents, you'll have crazy, sort of pastors who utter these nonsense. But some section of the media, including us, take them seriously.
That was the funniest. I'm sorry.
But take this seriously.
But again, it's the thing that it is, taken seriously. You've got news in Britain of a primary school where the children were not allowed to see the solar eclipse because they didn't want to offend religious and cultural sensitivities. And it again shows, science and religion, they're like this.
It's interesting that the school, I wonder what Ofsted thinks of this, the regulatory organization, about, children have the right to understand what eclipse is and discuss it and see the sign.
Then the more children understand, the less able you will be to dupe them and push superstition down their throats. And in a sense, this is why there's this constant, historical, ongoing battle between religion and science.
And let's fight.
And science always wins.
Let's carry on. So this brings us to the end of this week's program. I hope you enjoyed our program. Write to us, email us, text us, Twitter us, and if you have any questions or comments about the program, we're welcome to have them.
Oh, we also like your hate mail, actually, and we're going to have a special program so we can read some of those for our viewers and have a really good laugh. Anyway, we will see you again next time, same place and same place, same time and same place. We've got a fundraising campaign. Reza is doing this from the background.
Not to forget.
Not to forget. Well done, Reza. We've got a lovely campaign. We have now 12 people who are 12 lovely people who are supporting us every week in order to help with the cost of this program. So support us as well if you can. Thank you. And we'll see you again next week. Bye.
And goodbye from me in Maryam Namazie's style.
Hi, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya.
We're hosting a program called Bread and Roses. It's a weekly program that's broadcast in Persian and English in the Middle East and North Africa, primarily Iran as well. And it's also shown on YouTube internationally. And
we've been doing this since last May. We're coming up to our year's anniversary, and we've had quite a lot of fun making these videos. We discuss taboo-breaking, free-thinking ideas. The Islamic regime of Iran has called us immoral and corrupt. And that's why you need to support us. We are the alternative voice in Middle East and North Africa. Of corruption and immorality. So do support us. Here's a short video from Patreon that explains how you can help us with even just $1 a week. That's nothing. Support us.
Patreon lets fans become patrons of their favorite artists and content creators. It's different than Kickstarter because it's not about one big project that requires lots of funding. It's more for bloggers or YouTubers or webcomics, anyone who creates on a regular basis. Here's how it works. When you become a patron, you're agreeing to give an artist a tip of an amount you set every time they release a piece of content, whether it's a new song, a video, or a recipe. You can set a monthly maximum to make sure that you're always within your budget. Choose an amount, enter your payment information, and you're done. Becoming a patron allows you to view and post in the artist's stream, and in exchange for your support, artists offer additional patron packages, which might include monthly Google Hangouts, music production tutorials, pre-sale concert tickets, or anything they can offer as a way to say thanks. Patreon, empowering a new generation of content creators.